Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Unusual Minds podcast. This is your host, J.E. Fry. I was thinking about what I could do for the first episode of this podcast, who I could interview, what would be a good footnote into getting this started. And, kind of went over it in my head a few times. Of the mind that the best person that I could interview for this podcast is, well, myself, because I feel that the first episode should just be a kind of laying out of the ideas and the goals that we'd want this podcast to have, the foundation of what we're hoping that it could become as well. When I look around, just day to day life, the world at large, I see so much sadness. I see a lot of people who are going unfulfilled. I see a lot of people who just go about their day to day lives, going to a job they hate, to a family they feel maybe doesn't appreciate them as much. They maybe feel isolated, maybe feel alone. And I see this at such a wide level that there's just so many people out there that just don't feel that they have a voice. And I mean, I think we all fall into that trap sometimes. I know I do. Even if you feel like you have a voice, you don't feel that that voice is special, or that voice is unique, or that voice brings something to the table that is unique and beneficial, specifically to us. I feel that for anyone, to feel and be a healthy person, you have to understand that, you are special in your own way. I think everyone is special. And I feel that having a level of appreciation for yourself or feeling appreciated by others helps you kind of project that appreciation onto the world. Your day to day lives become more manageable. You feel as if you are making more of a difference. But when it comes to finding that voice, I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. They don't think about how they can, utilize their talents and their skills, to find a specific, unique expression just to them. And I have found that the greatest inspiration for me, at least, in actually getting me off my ass to go do something, whether it is painting, learning an instrument, video editing, music editing, whatever the case may be, hearing how that process works for creative people has helped me tremendously with discovering my own voice. Being able to have conversations with people in different creative mediums, whether they be artists, musicians, actors, being able to, kind of understand how they found their voice. It encourages me to keep at what I do. And the focus of this podcast is going to be interviewing people with, creative, interesting, and unusual minds. And I feel that when, we kind of listen to how these folks come up with their ideas, what inspired them, um, discovering our own voice becomes more tangible. We kind of can understand how their process works, and it allows us to kind of, create a process of our own that we can find both meaningful and unique to our experience. Now, I am, as far as, our artistic talent goes, I'm a jack of all trades, but a master of none. I do a lot of painting. I play a few instruments. Not good at either. I am a published comic book author and writer. Wrote articles for a bunch of websites. Actually, having my first graphic novel published this year, which is very exciting. Halstead Devil character is one I've been working on for about 5 years. So, 5 years of effort, finally seeing that come to fruition, seeing all that effort pays off is definitely a magical feeling of accomplishment. So, over the course of this series, I am going to be interviewing a lot of people from different artistic mediums. As it stands right now, mostly musicians, visual artists. Definitely going to have some comic book writers in there. I definitely love to get some more performance based people to talk about their process as well, because, it doesn't matter what the artistic media is that you're engaging in, it's what you bring to it that makes it your own. It's that voice inside of you that makes your performance, your painting, your song unique and special. I feel that society, in a lot of ways, tries to bog down our creative influences. It tries to commodify the creative experience and monetize those results. And it makes a lot of people feel that, if they're not making money off their art, or their music or, whatever form of expression, then, it's not worth participating in. And that's just not the case. Being able to engage in art, being able to engage in expressing yourself, it should never be just about making money. It should be about inspiring yourself and inspiring others through your work. Inspiration is something that, in today's society, in today's culture, we're desperately needing. People just seem like they're going through the motions a lot of the time. Particularly if you just work a standard 9 to 5 job, you're, locked in the same cubicle every day, or you're, driving the same truck every day, or you're working on the same kind of engine every day. We just get stuck in these cyclical patterns that just repeat themselves, and then time seems to just fly by. We ask ourselves where the days went. We kind of reflect back and we don't think that we've really accomplished anything. And though, we may be accomplishing, things, in our career, things in our personal lives, we don't feel fulfilled. We don't feel whole. That's what I think art and expression does. It makes us feel more whole as individuals. It gives us a mean to explore our own minds, our own feelings, our own thoughts, perspectives we have, whether good or bad. It allows us an avenue to kind of express those things, project those things, and, kind of work through whatever issues we'd like to be, featured in that work. Because, I worked as an art therapist for a while, or an art counselor, I should say, um, doing artwork with, kids who experience trauma. And when you see how they take their experiences and they use that artwork as a way to overcome their own preconceived notions about themselves, any sort of, negative feelings or thoughts they might have about themselves, when you see how artwork can be used, not only as a way to express yourself, but also as a way to heal, you start to understand the vast implications that engaging in, finding your voice can have for you, and beneficial ones at that. Overall, this is maybe one of the reasons that our culture doesn't focus on art. In a lot of ways, our culture doesn't want us to heal. It doesn't want us to be whole or fuller individuals. It wants you to be able to try and go out and buy products that define you, that try and fill that hole within you, try and fill that gap. But that's not the best way to define who you are. I mean, you don't just do, whatever, however you choose to decorate your home, however you choose to, identify yourself. Those are other people's ideas that were transmuted into product for you to buy. Even though you can kind of resonate with them, that doesn't make you feel unique. It doesn't make you feel special. It doesn't reflect maybe the higher aspirations of who you're hoping to be. So that's really what I'm hoping this podcast can do. Is kind of give some folks the inspiration to go out and find their voice. Kind of give themselves the inspiration through looking at what inspires others to go out and create, to fill that gap within themselves, to find something, whether it's painting, music, sculpting, whatever the case may be, to find something that is you and to bring it into the world so it can be appreciated by others, so it can inspire others, so it can strengthen this idea that we're all in it together, strengthen this idea that our creativity feeds off of each other, that we can help heal each other. I know it's kind of It's kind of an abstract thought. Like, well, if I'm just learning a couple chords on the guitar, how is that going to heal someone? I mean, just starting out. Well, it's also situation. When I was just starting out learning to play the dulcimer, I was completely terrible at it. But when I brought that instrument to the veterans home when my grandpa was there, and he couldn't talk or anything at the time, he couldn't express himself, and just that ability not to be able to express himself, you could just see the pain and anguish in his eyes because he wanted to tell you how he felt. He wanted to express all these things as he was laying there dying, and he just couldn't. But when I brought that dulcimer and I would play it, and I could just see the faint smile come to his face, and that toes start to bounce up and down in his bed, like, I knew that that was a medium for him to express the things he couldn't do in words, for him to express his love and appreciation for maybe all the experiences that we had. And, even when I would play for other folks at the veteran home, walking up and down the hall, either, on my way to his room or on my way back to the car, you can see how even a novice at that instrument, only learning a couple of chords, can really start to heal those people from, their sense of anguish or loneliness. So, even something as small as that makes a difference. Even something as, minuscule as learning a few chords on an instrument, but sharing it with a person at the right time can make a world of difference in how they perceive things. I mean, there was one guy there one time as I was, after I left my grandpa, it was his birthday. And he didn't have any family. He had been at the veterans home for 10 years. And, I'd sat and played a quick song for him. He started tearing up. I didn't know the guy. I've only probably, passed by him, given him a wave once or twice. But just that one moment that we shared, I mean, it made his day, probably made his year, definitely gave him a happy birthday. But little things like that, little kindnesses that we can use our art to express, it brings a level of appreciation, joy, and awe to the idea that, in that moment, he was special. In that moment, my intention, even though I didn't know him, was on him. And in that moment, he was inspired, maybe not to do his own artwork, but definitely inspired to help maybe someone else heal or do something kind for someone else. And that's the point, to inspire kindness. The point is to inspire appreciation. The point is to inspire others to want to find the voice that allows them to be the wholest person that they feel they can be. So, just kind of go off of, some of my inspirations in life. When I was a kid, I was actually pretty lonely. Lived in kind of a rural area, wasn't other kids to play with. And, even at school, I was the fat kid, so no one really paid me the time of day. So it was a very solitary life for the most part. And, that's all right because sometimes when we're in solitude, we learn to appreciate ourselves and our own voice a little bit more. As a kid growing up, kind of with that mindset, um, I would fill that gap with imagination, with adventure stories, things I would write up. You talk to my parents, they'll talk about how I just walk around at a young age making weird sound effects. Just dumb stuff like that. Pow bams, kind of, Batman sound effects. Mostly because I was just playing out stories in my head. And, those stories are important. So, one of my biggest influences growing up was comic books. It was this idea that, even if, society may reject us in a way, there is this hero inside of us all. There is this hero that can save others, make others feel appreciated. Really, that was personified most, at least for me, by Spider-Man. He's my number one hero. I've always resonated with that character mostly because nothing seems to ever go right for Peter Parker. He's always either having money troubles, girl troubles. He's not your suave Iron Man, sophisticated type. He was a nerd. He was bullied. He was, never gaining anything from being Spider Man. In fact, taking on the role of Spider Man seemed to ruin his life, but he kept doing it because it was the right thing to do. Because he realized with great power comes great responsibility. So, with your voice and with your sense of expression, you have a responsibility to share it. You can't just let it sit inside you and fester. You can't just, take it away from the free flow of ideas, let it become stagnant in its own pond. The idea that we all have a superpower to make others feel special is something that we all have, and it's something that we have a responsibility to share. It's something that we have a responsibility to use to make a better world. And, as a kid, there's no one I idolized more probably than Stan Lee. If you look at just, what he's done, what he's done over the course of his career, the characters that he's created, so many people he's inspired. I had the opportunity of meeting him twice. And, it's just like, they say don't meet your heroes. That was not the case with Stan. He was so kind, he was so gracious. And every single person that went up to shake his hand, to have a comic book signed, he took the time to make you feel special. Was it one of the things I did the first time I saw him is I went and I shook his hand and I gave him the tickler. I just started tickling the middle of his palm with my middle finger there, and he like grabbed me closer, gave me the tickler back, and said, "Woo, Excelsior!" Gave me a wink. Kind of went along with the joke, and it just made a memorable moment for me because instead of kind of like looking at me like I was a weirdo, he kind of led in or leaned in to the awkwardness, and he kind of went with it. And see, that's what we need sometimes. We just need someone to kind of lean into the person that we are and give us that encouragement and make us feel special. And I would also hope that, in a way, I gave him a story as well. Uh, you know, just like the idea of Stanley going in back and just telling one of his staff, "Oh boy, that guy out there, he gave me a tickler." Kind of just warms my heart. But, I feel like every experience should be like that. We should try and, leave an impression, at least leave a story someone can tell. Hopefully a good story, though that's not always often the case. But yeah, I don't know, I've had a lot of influences on my art as well. I've always been a big fan of surrealism, just kind of capturing, that kind of artwork that's a little bit off putting, a little bit, uh, a little bit awkward, or even a little bit horrifying at times. I was a big, big fan of movie posters growing up. Oh man, I had so many movie posters in my room, but they're never just like, your average movie poster. No, I always wanted the ones that were, the giant matte paintings, super realistic, a lot of action stuff going on. That kind of stuff is fantastic. Some of the artwork that comes out, as opposed to movie posters nowadays that, just something that's just Photoshop thrown together. Really, really, those old movie and VHS boxes from the 80s. I mean, that's some fantastic stuff. I loved old movie posters. But just with that same, like, kind of like surrealist aspect, I was really a big fan of the old pulp magazine paintings as well growing up. They're just those old oil paintings that always have some scene of action going on. That was just, kind of like summed up the entire experience you would have reading these adventures or detective stories. Some of that stuff's just fantastic. Um, but just surrealism in general. I like a lot of abstract art. Like a lot of like pop art, pop culture based art too. Particularly when you're looking at like surrealist pop art or more abstract and expressionist pop art, stuff like that. I just find phenomenal. Decorate my house mostly with that kind of stuff. Music too. I have a wide taste in music. Um, I'll even listen to Hungarian throat singing as long as it's well done and good. I'll give it the time of day. I love a lot of wide varieties of music. I've had a lot of influences. We're going to speak with some specifically selected musical artists this year that I think are going to provide a lot of insight on the craft. I'm a big fan of just the technicality of music, live music in general. Like if I'm going to a live music show, I'm usually just there to sit and watch the musicians perform. Just kind of watch their fingers dance and do their thing. Jazz, blues. I'm a big fan of like ethnic music, like tribal beat stuff. Uh, just a wide variety. Big fan of bluegrass, gospel. Uh, old school Delta blues is probably one of my favorites in the blues genre. But we can get into that later when we talk to some of those musicians. But I think that, also having an open mind has helped me to, kind of had a wide variety of influence on my life. I'll really go ahead and, try my best to open myself up to new experiences, to new cultures, um, to different expressions of art because, I mean, I feel that the more you open yourself up to it, the more you grow, the more those different ideas may challenge certain viewpoints you've had and kind of challenge you to become a larger person. And, um, if even if you don't accept, those ideas, at least, give them a reasonable discourse, in your own decision making abilities on the merits of those ideas. But at least you're thinking about them, at least you're engaging with them. That's one of the things I feel that a lot of folks, if you just don't open yourself up to engaging with those ideas, you're never going to grow. But, this first episode I did want to keep short. I did want to. I just wanted this episode to be kind of an introduction, kind of lay down a general theme of what I'm hoping we're going to go for, which is something that's funny, something that's uplifting, something that kind of challenges the way we think sometimes, maybe challenge our viewpoints, and hopefully leave us with a feeling of aspiration for the person that we could be, and discovering our own voice. So I figured I would just go ahead and leave off this episode with that song that I wrote when I was sitting by my grandfather's bed in the VA. I probably won't do this very often as I don't write many songs. I'm not very good at writing music, but this one I just sat there for a good while, so I had a lot of time to practice because at the time he was not one for conversation. He just kind of sit there and give me the glazed over look, hoping I didn't quit. So, without ado, I'm going to leave you with this song. I do hope you come back next week. I got a lot of guests, and yeah, evening, folks.